Joseph W. Brady comments on the voter turnout at Spring Valley Lake and tells of the response of county officials to issues that were brought up and are being addressed.
And we had 5,811 registered voters. Okay, so follow the numbers. 5,811, that's quite a few people. There were 4,760 people that voted. Ultimately, there was a little bit more than that. So there were 5,167 people that voted out of the 5,811, almost 89%. Okay. Shortly after the election, I reached out and I wrote Rory Shannon and Steve Garcia an email, rather exhaustive email, and I carbon copied about 25 people on there. I pretty much carbon copied everybody that was an endorser to the election. And I said, now's the time that we need to heal each other, okay? Sure, am I glad that we won? Yeah, it was a pretty big win. It wasn't a win, it was a big win. 70% tells you that people didn't like what they heard. The community is divided. We heard it. I mean, everybody that helped stand outside the post office and hand out flyers heard the same thing. I've reached out to Rory since the November election, I believe 4 or 5 times by emails, once or twice by text, I think once by a phone call. Never heard. I did receive a phone call from his wife Shannon about a week ago, and Shannon was not very happy about the outcome, and she expressed her concerns very clearly. And as I explained to her, there's always two sides to every story. There's your side, my side, and then there's somewhere in the middle that probably we're going to find something. And I said to her, Shannon, it's really important that we get everybody to work in here, because there is a perception in Spring Valley Lake that there's a clique that kind of runs things, that you've got a board that might be run by somebody else, maybe by the attorney or whatever. Terry, on a little side note, I did hear from somebody the other day that, and this goes back like 10 years ago, that apparently through back when Jeff Morgan, my friend, and Glenn Graybeck, my former friends, were somewhat in power, they had told general manager, don't respond to any questions that Joe Brady had. So I think that hopefully maybe if I had to give a recommendation to the board, I think that they just recently learned that that's probably not a really good way to do things, because there's other ways that we're going to get the word out. I'm very concerned about the country club. I think it's a great asset. I think it's something that could be very viable. About 3 weeks ago, 2 people on that board who I have a high respect for, Bill Scott. Bill was a very, very well-known employer out in Atlanta, very well employer, and Brian Hurst, one of the top real estate agents within the entire High Desert region with First Team, and he was formerly with Shearer. Took me out and we had a cup of coffee to talk about, how do we kind of work together towards the association. And during that discussion, we talked about some perception issues possibly between myself and Mr. Logan, which there really are not. But so to test it, Brian suggested if I had an email to send it to info@SVLA, not to Alfred Logan directly, and to carbon copy Brian, and I would definitely get a response. So I decided to do that recently, but I decided not to carbon copy Brian. So now I'll tell everybody who's watching this what I did. I said to Alfred, I said, we are 2 men. We're 2 grown men, and if there's some issues, we sit down like 2 grown men, and we sit down at a table, socially distanced, and we work it out. So I offered to buy us lunch, meet somewhere to get this thing over. So I waited about 4 or 5 days and never got a response. So I finally then let Bill Scott and Brian Hurst, as well as Robert Reed. So Robert Reed's a very close friend, sits on the board, has been there a long time, has a lot of history. And I let him know. I said, Robert, I've done everything possible in order to do this. So again, the message back to anybody that's watched this in Spring Valley Lake. We're a community of 997 plus or minus acres. We have a great lake. We got a great country club. We got a lot of great people. I mean, we have a lot of great people on in there. We have a CSD issue that's now been resolved, and it's been resolved very, very clearly. Let me give you an update on something that just recently happened. So immediately after the election, I reached out to Leonard Hernandez, who is the CAO, Chief Administrative Officer of San Bernardino County, and to Luther Snokes, who was the interim Director of Special Districts, but now he's the Chief Operating Officer. I reached out to him immediately and I said, I'd like to talk to you about what can we do to bring Spring Valley Lake together. immediately response. No games, no, we're going to play behind the email deal. We picked a day here rather close to this filming, and we did a WebEx. They were in their conference room, and I was up here. I want to say they're incredibly well dressed. We had a delightful conversation. My intent with them was this: Terry, we are broken in Spring Valley Lake. There were many issues that the formation committee said that were issues, and some of them could be. So I'm going to read a couple of these just really quickly. The $1 million that Mr. Shannon and the committee contended that the county had taken over the last 5 years. The rent that has not been paid proportionally on the lot over on Santa Fe where the other CSAs kind of share space. The archway issue on Spring Valley Lake, so that has not been repaired. A little side note, I will tell you that Steve Samaras, who's the general manager of CSA 64, the guy does a great job. You call his office about a problem, and I mean they're lickety split. I had to talk to him recently about something I saw in Spring Valley Lake to just kind of alert him, and he's had some conversations I know with Spring Valley Lake and their leadership about what we're going to do to repair that. The one thing that came about from the conversation with Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Snokes is that they know that they can do things better, okay, and that they've gone back and taken a look at some of the things that Rory and the committee came up with, and they really felt that some of the things that they had come up with were very legitimate. So to Shannon and to Rory Shannon, I apologize if you didn't like the outcome here. Rory, I want to thank you personally for the amount of time that you put in. So both Leonard Hernandez and Luther acknowledge the amount of personal time that you put in, and I understand that. I also understand, to make things clear, I had come up with this idea back in March of 2008 that we take a look and reach out to Kimberly Cox and see, and it was going to be Jim Carr, Larry Hoover, myself. We're going to meet and have lunch with Kimberly to see how their deal worked, and it didn't work. But I think what has happened now, Terry, is we've got a case where a formation committee did their deal. They had the political wherewithal. They got endorsed by Congressman Cook and Supervisor Lovingood and people, Mike Page with MWA and Gabe Stein and some other people. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. Okay, rather than saying that they lost 70-30, why don't we say, let's go back and figure out how we do this. But at the end of the day, we're a great community, and we want younger people to move in that community. We don't want people to feel like there's a clique of people that think that they're in power, or that it's just the people of the country club, or they're there. I mean, we heard everything in the parking lot, and I really want to see us get past that, because we are a great community. We have a great asset, a great lake. We got a great community. So let's make it a better community, and I'm going to stay involved in it, and that we can all move forward and make Spring Valley Lake an even better place to live, work, and play, and make it the jewel of the high desert region.